Hi, everyone. We're having people slowly join us. I'm just going to give them just a moment for everyone to join, and then we'll get started. All right. I think we should be good. With that, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you here for our webinar, AI and Nonprofits Going Beyond the Buzz. My name is Lauren Langer, and I'll be the host for today's webinar. Before we dive in, I'm honored to introduce our presenter, Ann Balduzzi. Ann is a recognized AI expert and one of the DC region's top women in tech. With an extensive experience in optimizing operational efficiency and mitigating risks with AI, she's held key roles as industry giants such as Apple and AOL, and is also a founder of the award-winning AI-enabled platform SameGrain and holds a patent in data match analysis. Today, Ann will take us beyond the buzz of AI into the practical real-world applications that can benefit your organization. A few housekeeping items before we get started. First, please keep your microphones on mute throughout the presentation to avoid any background noise. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Zoom chat to submit them directly to me. I'll be collecting those questions, and at the end of the webinar, I'll read them out to Ann so that she can answer them to the best of her ability. Without further ado, Ann, over to you.
Great. Thanks, everybody, for having me here today. I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you all. I always start out, by the way, I've been speaking on AI for over 20 years, more or less talking about the future of AI, but that future is actually now. And so I like to put a little disclaimer out there because the future is growing and changing very quickly. And therefore, some of the information that you're going to learn about today will quickly be out of date. And that's happening in large part because AI is growing exponentially. In fact, there's a quote that I kind of like to use that really kind of stresses this in more ways than one. And that is, we are going through a very rare and pivotal moment in human history. This is going to be this age of AI is going to be incredibly transformative. It's going to impact us more than the invention of electricity, the introduction of the Industrial Revolution, or even the invention of the internet. This is going to be, in fact, more transformative than all three of those, technological leaps that we took through society combined. And so it's unprecedented. Frankly, and it may even be the last technology created by humans. So given that innovation and progress, the other thing to keep note of is that this technology is actually growing exponentially. And to help you better understand what exponential growth actually looks like, I want you to try to imagine taking 30 linear steps from wherever you're seated right now. So just look around the space around you, and you can pretty easily imagine where 30 steps might take you. You could probably take you maybe to the other side of a room or take you to the other side of a building. But now try to imagine 30 exponential steps. And if I asked you to think of exponential steps, you're maybe imagining 30 steps taking you to the other side of the town, maybe taking you to the other side of a state, or even the other side of the country. But the reality is 30 exponential steps would actually take you almost to the moon. And that's really hard, by the way, for humans to understand and grasp. So I give this sort of, kind of a little bit of a kind of exercise to help people better understand the rate and speed at which AI is growing and transforming all of us in the process. But this has not been an overnight success. In fact, AI has actually slowly grown over the last 70 years. And if I break it down into the timeline, we are actually in a phase of AI that's referred to as artificial narrow intelligence. That's the blue box over on the left. We've been in this stage of narrow intelligence for several decades, and we're maybe getting close to the end of it. But this is the narrow AI that is allowing us to use AI in very narrow use case applications. It is predicted that we will reach the next phase of AI, which is referred to as artificial general intelligence, sometime the end of this decade. Now, it could happen later, it could happen sooner, but you'll hear a lot of buzz about what AGI, and that's basically when AI is equal to human intelligence. And that's where you would literally have potentially sitting next to you an AI that has a PhD level brain that can think in all different kinds of directions, both narrowly and vertically and horizontally, and really has a wide range of capabilities within it. And that is likely the next stage. Now, there is the possibility of a final stage of AI, and that's what's referred to as artificial superior intelligence, or ASI. And this is basically when the AI is superior to humans and the AI knows it. This is where all your science fiction movies tend to gravitate towards this final phase. There's no guarantee we'll ever get to that final phase. And even if we do get to it, there's just as much of a chance that it will be a utopian society, kind of like a Star Trek society, versus more of the dystopian kind of maybe Star Wars type society. So that being said, and I only mention this final phase of AI is because a lot of your employees and staff, when they simply hear the word artificial intelligence, their minds gravitate to that final phase of AI. And they're thinking of all the, horrible sci-fi movies and kind of that's where their mindset might be. And that's not necessarily correct or true. So try to make sure that your staff and employees are not fearful of AI in that respect, because there's really a lot of great benefits to AI, and especially the AI that we have today. We're in the gold rush era of AI. So with that being said, the history of AI, how we actually got to the AI of today, has transformed over those 70 plus years. It actually got its start in the 1950s. We had what's called an AI winter that took place between the 60s and the 90s. And that's where basically AI has continued to be, in this time frame at least, limited by computational power. We were limited by the amount of data that we had. Our algorithms were not that sophisticated. And frankly, there just wasn't a lot of funding being spent in the direction of AI. And if you want to, for grins and giggles, want to look at an AI project from Apple way back in that time frame, Apple put together something called Apple Knowledge Navigator, and it's a grainy old video that's up on YouTube. If you search for Apple Knowledge Navigator, it'll show you sort of what the AI prediction from Apple from way back in that time frame. And frankly, it wasn't that far off from where we're about to be today. AI is clearly moving in this same direction, and a lot of the things that are highlighted in this video could actually be utilized in the coming months. Now, the next phase of AI is referred to as the classifying and tagging movement. This is where data was being, really classified. And there was a movement also towards deep learning during this phase. A lot of the companies that existed in this time frame were kind of researching AI and using it to determine whether AI could beat a human, for example, at the game of chess, or beat a human, in Jeopardy. And that was IBM's Watson was able to do that. And then in 2017, if you're not familiar with this, DeepMind, which is currently owned by Google, DeepMind went off and created a program that could actually beat the number one human in a game called Go. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the game of Go, it's the longest continuously played game in humanity. It's been played for over 2,500 years. And there are more moves in the game of Go, on the game board, more moves than there are atoms in the observable universe. So it's a highly complex game. And what they found with the AI and using the AI to, defeat the number one Go player, human Go player, which was a guy named Lee Sedol, they actually found out that it was designed in a way that it was thinking of new ways, new moves in the game that no human had ever thought of before. So this was showing the true power of AI in and of itself. In other words, it could think in ways that humans had never been able to think in that format before. So it was really thinking outside the box, so to speak. And that brought us to this new age of AI. And there was kind of a lot of technologies that kind of had to fall into place to get where we are today. But this helped us move into this generative AI era in which we're surrounded today by large language models. And you'll see there was way back long ago, we had, this was before, GPT-1 was 2018, but, most people didn't have access to it back then. DeepMind also solved the protein folding problem back in 2020. That's basically unlocking all kinds of new inventions through that process or through that innovation. And then now we're in this stage of AI where we're having an explosion of large language models, and I'll talk more about those in a few minutes. So these fractured AI efforts that have been taking place over the last several decades have all now been united around text prompts. And so when you're working with a large language model, you're typically using text, and that text can generate a report, a press release, a poem, any number of text outputs. You can use text to generate code. You can programming code. You can use text to generate an image or a video or music or audio, and in translations as well. Robot instructions are moving in this direction, and there are other endless possibilities. But the other thing that's happening is more and more of these large language models are becoming multimodal. And what that means when you hear the term multimodal, it means you don't just have to use text in your prompt. In other words, your prompt could be your own voice. And that's kind of working with these large language models much in the way you would connect and talk to a chatbot. And soon to be rolled out, you'll have the opportunity also to use images. In fact, you can use images now in your uploads, in your prompts, but a new way in which you can actually open up your phone and show it your surrounding and have the AI then engage with you based on the surroundings or based on what it's seeing through your camera. So that will soon be rolling out in the near future. Now, to help you understand sort of how the AI is trained and how this training has been taking place, when I talk about classifying and tagging data, this is really how it was done. You basically, and this is just one use case, this is not the only way it was done, but you basically had to show the AI thousands of images of blueberry muffins and thousands of images of a Chihuahua dog so that it could tell the difference between a blueberry muffin and a Chihuahua dog. Our human brains can very easily, with a second or two, we can look at each image and know, oh yeah, that's a dog, that's a muffin. But an AI had to be trained in order to be able to do that. So after decades of classifying all these different images, we now have the capability through a text prompt to type in, hey, create a blueberry muffin dog. And then all of a sudden it generates an image. In fact, it can generate hundreds of images of different styles of a blueberry muffin dog, if that's something you wanted to create. But you can even now take it a step further, and you can make that image talk to you. You can make that image move around in a video. So there's lots of interesting and unique ways in which these new large language models are actually being used. So this, while it took, decades of programming and decades of, innovation for us to actually get to the point in which we can, work with these large language models, the prompt engineering is a relatively new phenomenon. And this is actually really important in how you interact and engage with these large language models. Now, I'm going to talk about large language models a lot today, and so I just want to give you a little bit of an understanding of some of them in case you're not that familiar with all of the different styles of large language models that exist out there today. I'm assuming most of you are familiar with ChatGPT. This is a multimodal large language model that was created by OpenAI. It's one of the more popular ones. You can actually download it on your phone. I recently got access to the voice chat mode, and able to use it as like an AI assistant and have the microphone open, and you can talk to it and ask questions and it'll answer you. So that's one of the multimodal powers that it has. But it also has access to the internet. So the information is pretty up to date. They have what's called a GPT store that you can gain access to experts who have created prompts. And so therefore, if you don't have the time or the energy to go out and create your own prompt, you can have an expert created prompt for you in any one of a number of different areas. And this is a continuing to be very popular, large language model in the scheme of things. And by the way, all of these large language models are evolving every day. They're changing every day. This is just information as of, the 15th of this month. So I expect more news and information to come out on them in the coming days and weeks. The next competitor to GPT-4 is Claude 3.5 Sonnet. And in fact, it outperforms GPT-4o in several areas. This was created by a company called Anthropic. And it creates kind of a collaborative work environment. So the style in which it works with the user is slightly different. They have something called artifacts that makes it kind of more of a collaborative feel as you're working with it. It happens to be particularly good at coding, so creating programming code, transcribing text from imperfect images. It can do all kinds of interesting capabilities like that. So it may be ideal for like retail, logistics, financial services, different organizations are finding different use cases for it. The next one I'd like to mention is Google's Gemini 1.5. And by the way, all of these that I've mentioned are free to use. There's some that require you to pay, and there's different paid levels of using these as well. But Gemini 1.5 is the latest version of Google's large language model. And what's interesting about this one is it has a 1 million token context window. And what I mean by tokens and a context window, the context window is the window in which you put your prompt, so your question or whatever it is you're looking for. But if you imagine having a 1 million token context window, that means you could upload as part of your prompt, you can upload an hour-long video, you could upload 11 hours of audio, you could upload over 700,000 words, which is basically about 3/4 of the entire Harry Potter series. And so these create really, really large prompts. And it actually creates a new dynamic in which you can work with these large language models. And by the way, all of these large language models are moving in the direction of having larger context windows. In fact, Google's looking at even bigger context windows down the road. So when you think about that, that creates new opportunities and use cases in which you might consider working with any one of these models. And then the last one I'm mentioning is Meta. Meta, for those of you who are not familiar with that word, they own Facebook and Instagram. It's what they call the company. And they have a large language model that they've recently introduced, or at least the latest version of it, called Llama 3.1. And what's unique about this large language model is that it is open source. The architecture can actually be customized. So it creates the foundation large language model that many of these other large language models have. But because it's open source, you can actually, as an organization, can actually work with it and customize it for your own use cases. So that creates another interesting variety of ways in which you can work and use these large language models. Now, there are hundreds of large language models, and there are many other popular ones that I just don't have time to mention today. But just know that this is just 4 of several large language models that currently exist out there. Now, if you're looking at sort of how are these language models actually evolving, if I just take one of them, and that I'm going to just look at GPT, just to show you sort of how its knowledge is improving over time. So in 2019, you could say GPT, the earlier versions were roughly at the preschooler level, and then they migrated to like the adolescent and the high school student level. It's kind of anticipated now that it's at the college or grad student level. And then with the 4.0, that's basically the enhanced capabilities, and it's adding more and more intelligence along the way. But one of the areas that it's really, everyone's very anticipating the next version of ChatGPT, and that would be GPT-5. And it's assumed that this will be at the Extreme Pro or the PhD level. And what's interesting about that is you will literally have working with you, when you're querying it, is having somebody that has a PhD level knowledge of whatever that question you might have, and able to give you a very, very fine-tuned answer to it. So this is the direction that all of these large language models are taking. I've just cited ChatGPT just to give you sort of an example of their actual growth curve. And then we have AI that is actually showing up on your devices or within your software. Microsoft Copilot has actually been around for a while. It's a great use case for, might be on the devices that you're using now. And then there's Apple Intelligence. So Apple is intending to roll out their version of AI onto their devices sometime probably more this fall and maybe next year. But just be on the lookout. More and more of these of your devices are actually going to come with AI built into them. And they're also going to come with a greater kind of chip infrastructure to handle the greater level of intelligence as well. And all of this, when you add it all together, it really, the bottom line is it's going to help you with increased productivity. So that's helping you write proposals, letters, reports, emails, and that list goes on and on. It can also help you evaluate market research, better analyze data. You can use it to review contracts or review budgets. You can use it to help with a negotiation and even look into how to best handle an objection during a negotiation. You can easily use it to recap meetings. In fact, that's a feature that's built into a lot of the meeting platforms today. And then it can also cite next steps. And it's really great at brainstorming new ideas because, like I said earlier, it really thinks outside the box. And then if you're talking to people that are from the marketing, PR, or social media side of your organization, there are amazing tools that we'll talk a little bit more about that can help them increase their productivity. So it's really right now, any repetitive task, most of these AI tools can help with, but it's actually getting beyond repetitive task and it's able to do much more. So if I look at just sort of the general business AI use cases, I'm just going to cite a few here and then we'll dive into some more. But from a human resources perspective, it can help with onboarding and training new employees. In fact, you can use it to personalize that training that might be relevant to a specific job role. And you could even have sort of a virtual assistant that's available to answer questions about your organization's policies or vacation time or any rules or regulations that they might need. And this enables a really consistent onboarding of new hires. So you don't have to worry about even turnover within the HR department because you're going to have that. You can rest, confidently that same hiring, the same messages are getting out to every new hire. You can also use it to manage and review performance. So you can create these analytical tools that are looking at the performance data. They're identifying trends or providing actionable insights that can go to a manager to help them really evaluate that individual's performance and also areas for development. And then diving a little deeper into the marketing and PR stuff that I mentioned earlier, it really comes down to personalization. And you're going to hear a lot about personalization because the AI can easily target marketing efforts or frankly, any kind of effort to a specific donor audience that might have specific needs or specific interests. And this is a way of really better engaging with that audience. If you have a website, you might have in the past, gone to SEO experts to try to increase your ranking or something like that. Well, now you can easily drop your content into one of these large language models and ask it to make it, to optimize it for search engines. And it can go ahead and recraft and rewrite your copy or provide suggestions. Now, when it comes to images and video, this is the really interesting part because in the past, marketing people have often had to pay for images or pay for videos to be created for them. Now, with the use of these amazing AI tools, those images can be created by an AI and they're oftentimes royalty free. The videos can also be created by AI, and you can use these videos, within your websites, your newsletters, your press release, and your social media posts. And they used to be a lot harder and more complicated to create, but now, thanks to these great AI tools, you can create a really fairly nice looking video in a matter of minutes. In fact, you could create a commercial grade commercial within probably just a few hours. And the AI can write the copy. The AI can suggest, sort of the storyboard of how to get that message out. And the AI can even create the videos within it. So this is where we're headed with a lot of these marketing and PR tools. Now I want to go into some use cases that might be more relevant for you all, and that is things like donor engagement. So this is a really growing area of AI and probably one of the easiest to implement. And that is you can create and build an AI agent, or sometimes called a chatbot, that can actually work with your donors. In other words, it can deliver instant personalized responses. It can handle any routine inquiries that you might receive. And it can just simply streamline those communications. And this is going to improve over time your member support, your member engagement, and it's going to help you as an organization stand out from any competitors that you might have. And if needed, if you're working in more of a global kind of environment, you can even have these chatbots speak in almost any language on the planet or any dialect on the planet. That's how well trained they are. And basically what you do, the way in which you get these chatbots to communicate your messaging, is you simply train it. And you're training it on your data, on your website content, and any other content that you choose to upload into these systems. And it can train and customize the responses. So this is just a nice way to especially if you're short-staffed, ways in which you can interact with your donors in a new and different way. Or you can simply use this kind of AI chatbot to communicate with your own staff, so that when your staff is communicating with your donors, that they're doing it in a more consistent fashion. When it comes to fundraising, there's an amazing donor insights that can be gathered thanks to AI. You can really kind of look at a donor's behavior, their preferences, what motivates them. And this can be used to create these donor profiles or their giving patterns and preferences, so that you can sort of help to plan, what time of year is the best time to reach out to that individual, or what really motivates that individual to give. And then there's resource allocations, optimizing your programming by analyzing the data and the participant demographics. All of these kinds of things can help. When you blend it all together, it's really helping to better serve your members and serve the communities as well. And then grant writing. This seems like a real natural one. And I'm going to guess that many of you may have already been using AI for some of this as well. But this is a great way of, helping you, because grant writing can be very time consuming. I've gone through it myself. And frankly, when you use AI, you can train it on the information surrounding, the grant submission, that the way in which it needs to be organized. And you can increase your success rates in getting these grant opportunities. And then you can have it actually, pull from a database of past successful applications and customize even the writing style or the content to fit whatever the grant criteria might be. But with all the good, there's always the downside. So while AI has a lot of amazing promises that it can bring to all of our organizations, there are risks and dangers with it as well. And so I want to kind of just talk about those risks for a second. One of the words that you're going to hear a lot when you hear people talk about large language models, or just any of the AI tools out there, you may often hear a word used, and it's basically means when AI makes stuff up. So the word is hallucination, and hallucination simply means that you might have created a prompt that, for example, you asked the AI to show you the top 5 or 10 ski areas in the West Virginia or something like that. And if it can only find 2 or 3, it's going to make all the other ones up because of the way you wrote that prompt. We're imagining this will be a very short-lived problem as these, as these large language models improve and evolve over time. I certainly have seen the number of hallucinations dramatically get reduced. And they've been reduced not only by the large language models, but I've also seen them I've also been able to reduce them with my own style of writing a prompt. So if you write a better prompt or you ask it to cite references within your prompt, you're have a better shot at actually getting a real answer and avoiding these hallucinations. Again, I think it's a short-lived problem. Some of these large language models are automatically citing references now, which is a nice kind of, growth curve, a nice addition. But go ahead and ask it. And by the way, when you do see those cited references, click on them and check them out because they too could be fake. So you want to make sure that the information that you're getting is as knowledgeable and correct as possible. Another downfall or downside of AI is the possibility for getting a biased response. And this happens in large part because AI as a whole was sometimes trained on biased data. And now, right now, most of the large language models have been dialing down the bias. In fact, this is something that they've worked really hard on getting down, but it's still going to be a problem. And anytime you're working with your own data in combination with these large language models, you also have to be really cognizant of the fact that just the way you craft your prompt might exacerbate getting a biased response back. So you have to really be careful on how you create your prompts. Ideally, there's ways in which you can craft those prompts to help mitigate a biased response. And then finally, if you have diverse teams of people that are working on these AI solutions, they themselves may be in a position to better help spot and reduce that bias as well. But hopefully this will be another short-lived problem if we can get the AI working and evolving in new directions. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of black box thinking. And black box thinking is really the term that's used that the AI is creating answers that are simply too complex for humans. So if you look at, there isn't a physical black box anywhere. That's just a term that's actually, just being tossed around in the AI community. But what it means is that the AI is just creating the answers. So when you look at the answer, there's no real way to peel back the onion to figure out how did the AI come up with that answer. It's just the algorithms are far too complex for us to figure that out. Now, the good news is that they have researchers right now that are looking into AI tools that can help peel that onion in a way that humans can better understand how these answers are generated. But until then, we are all kind of at the mercy of trusting the AI to look at, give us an answer that is somewhat educated in its response. Most of them are fairly good answers, but you always want to check your answers and just understand that the way in which that answer was created is not fully understood as of today. And then that takes us to the scarier side of AI. And this is where I like to refer to these deep fakes. Deep fakes are essentially when you can use an AI tool to create an image or a video that it is totally not real. Now, this is an image of me winning an Olympic medal at the bottom. I have never won an Olympic medal. I have never been in the Olympics. But within a few seconds, I was able to take an image of an Olympic athlete and change the face and insert my face into it. In fact, I can even have it speak. And here we go.
I'm so excited to be an Olympic gold medalist. I really want to thank all of my supporters.
Now, that's kind of goofy looking. But honestly, I created that for free and it only took me probably a minute or two to create. So if I were to spend a little bit of money and a little bit more time, I could have created something that would be completely indistinguishable. In other words, you couldn't tell the difference between the AI and me talking right now. And that's how good the AI is at this point in time. Now, what that means is that the AI can actually be fooled in ways. In other words, you can use these tools to fool people. People could be putting things up on social media that simply are not true about your organization or about any leaders within your organization. And this is already happening, by the way, with famous people and politicians, but it's going to start pervading even deeper into other parts of society because it's so simple to do. You can basically just need a few seconds of somebody's voice or an image. And once a fake is seen, it's really hard for people not to believe that it was fake because they saw a video of it. And it's really hard for them not to understand that an AI could actually create something like that. And this is getting even worse when you add in the dark web. So the dark web, and I like to call it Fraud GPT. I actually think there is something already out there called Fraud GPT. And basically, when I talked about all those fascinating use cases for doing good with AI, there are unfortunately people out there, bad actors, that are using AI for evil. They're creating more sophisticated spear phishing campaigns. They're creating undetectable malware. They're generating all kinds of vulnerabilities. And more importantly, they can create a voice that sounds just like your boss. In fact, they only need a few seconds of your boss's voice to create that. They could even create a video, as you saw earlier from my video, but if with a little more sophistication, they can create a video and have somebody jump on a Zoom call with you that you think is your boss, but is actually not your boss. And all of these scams are going to be targeting the weakest people in your organization. And that's ultimately, at the end of the day, the employee that is not a critical thinker, that is not trained to be able to spot these types of scams. So it's incredibly important to train your staff. Really make sure that they understand that these kinds of scams are going to be happening more and more, and they really need to be aware of them. In fact, most of these scams, in fact, the ones that have already happened, are typically happening around financial transactions. So you want to make sure that the people that are dealing with money in your organization are probably the first to be trained on this, because there are emails that they may receive that look like they're coming directly from a vendor that they work with every day. But in fact, that vendor may have been hacked. And now that vendor's sending you emails that are saying, oh yeah, the routing number on our banking has changed to this number or something like that. And that's exactly how these scams start. In fact, they've taken people for millions of dollars simply by telling an employee that was unaware and saw the email and it came from that vendor and they believed it and they didn't check it. Or in the future, they're going to be getting a phone call from their boss that's going to sound just like their boss, and it's going to be telling them to change some financial thing. Always train your employees when they're dealing with a change to a current system to pick up the phone and call that vendor directly, or pick up the phone and call their boss and just double check it. Say, did you just call me and ask me to do this? Now, it's going to sound a little crazy at first, but it's the only way that we can really kind of work to help avoid these types of scams. And then when it comes to your family, I always like to throw this in all my talks, more like a public service announcement. But next time you're all together, with your family members, whether it's a holiday or whatever, have everyone leave their phone in the house. Have everybody walk away from any Alexa devices or any other device and go to your furthest corner of your yard and come up with a secret family passcode or passphrase that you never type and never talk about, never text, and just have it memorized in that moment. And that way, when a family member calls you and says, oh, I just had an accident, I need you to wire me X amount of money, you ask them for the passcode and see if that scammer knows the passcode. And then I would even double check it beyond that and actually call that family member and make sure that it really was them in need of that money or situation. Because these scams are honestly starting more and more. And I'm even getting phone calls, especially to elderly people, phone calls that are coming in where there's no voice at all. And they're waiting for you to go, hello, hello, is anybody there? And the more you talk to that open-ended call that they're just gathering your voice, frankly. So if nobody answers on the other end beyond hello, I think you should hang up, right? You don't want to be talking to an open-ended phone call and so that they can just continue to grab your voice. So the final downfall, and by the way, there are many downfalls, so it's not really the final one, but these are some of I'm hitting on the high points here. But another high point, and one that everybody should be aware of, is bad data. If you have bad data within your organization, in other words, badly structured data, it's badly organized, it's creating a scenario when AI is going to hurt you more than it's going to help you. The primary strength of AI lies in analyzing kind of vast amount of data and making these predictions. But if you're feeding it incorrect data, or biased data or data that's not standardized, it's going to give you very unreliable and unusable outcomes. And so it's really important that if you haven't had good data hygiene habits up to this point in time, it's really critically important for the future of your organization to survive, to make sure that you and all of your employees are truly using good data hygiene habits and procedures within the context of gathering data. And also be very careful that your employees are not already uploading sensitive data to these random large language models. It's very, very tempting, and a lot of people have already been playing around with these models and experimenting with them, and you want to make sure that your employees are not simply putting in your budget data or some other kinds of data, your list of donors. You certainly don't want to be uploaded into these, because these large language models are very hungry for data. And if you upload it to just, any large language model out there, there's a good chance it's going to be incorporated into their learning, and could be, given to a competitor even at some point. So one way to restrict this is to, have, we'll talk more about some solutions to this, but this is really a big problem I see right now, and something that everybody should really be focused on in training your staff to not use this sensitive data. Now, there are ways in which you can use large language models in conjunction with sensitive data. It just takes a little higher level of sophistication to do it. And so you really want to be working with an expert in understanding that part of the process. But the best defense against all of this is a strong offense. So I highly recommend kicking off, within your organization, starting with an AI assessment. And this is really going to take a deeper look at having an outside organization really take a deep look at your sensitive information, how your data is currently handled, whether or not your cybersecurity training is up to date. And also looking into the quality of the data. Where is it stored? How it's being used? I mean, can it be used to help develop an AI, use case for you? And then you also want to do a vendor analysis, because more and more vendors, software vendors perhaps that you're working with already, they're going to be adding AI into their solutions. In fact, many already have. And so you want to best understand how that AI is being integrated, how that AI is being used, whether it's safe to put your data into that solution, and all of these different kinds of questions. So that's another part of the assessment or analysis. And then you want to also, have somebody look and talk to the individuals, departments, and at the company-wide level to make sure that the use cases that maybe you're considering, or even to generate additional use cases that your company could take advantage of, that will align with your goals and help overall boost your productivity. And this is something that requires a pretty in-depth, analysis to really understand it. Ideally, at the end of the day, you're looking for sort of a matrix that's going to help you visualize the range of potential AI use cases that you could take advantage of, and which ones are going to be easier to implement, or which ones are going to have the biggest impact for you in the long run, and which ones you might already have data that's ready to go for those use cases as well. So that's part of that kind of general assessment. And then you want to look at your governance model. And the governance model is really just a way of managing risk alongside your innovations. So the more and more you innovate, the more risk you're going to be, kind of looking to mitigate along the way. So you want to make sure your ethical principles are built into this. Ideally, establishing an oversight committee is a nice thing to have. That's where you have kind of a group of stakeholders from different departments that can all, kind of analyze the types of use cases and kind of think them through how that's going to overall impact the organization. You want to be, the model is going to be talking about bias and fairness and equitable treatments, transparency of information, and also continually improving this governance model. AI, unfortunately, is not a one and done. It's not as simple as, oh yeah, we did the assessment, we did the governance model, I'm going to just check that box and we are done. AI is constantly evolving. It's exponentially evolving, as we talked about at the beginning of this talk. So it's really important that you continually improve and update this information along the way, because of the rapid pace in which things are changing. And then ideally, at the end of the day, you want to wind up with an AI roadmap. And this is sort of a roadmap that has a top-down approach. And the reason I say this is because there have been organizations where, an individual, at some bottom level is starting to work on some AI initiative, just on their own, or maybe with a small team of people, but it doesn't have the buy-in of the executives. And you really want that top-down approach so that this is a holistic kind of, approach is being taken in creating that roadmap. You also want to make sure it's aligning with the business goals and that you're selecting those right use cases and have a real clear path to implementing that solution. You want to make sure your data quality is in good shape. And ideally, at the end of the day, you want to build a skilled team. And you want to have people who are experts in cyber, data, AI, and ideally people that are even experts at the Microsoft Copilot level, if that happens to be the platform that you're working from. This is going to be really hard to do initially because there are very few experts in this space. So most people are outsourcing this to organizations that have all of these skill sets under one umbrella, because it's going to take that kind of holistic knowledge of cyber, data, AI, and also understanding, the software features within Copilot to really build a comprehensive roadmap for you. And then at the end of the day, you want to pilot these projects and scale the ones that are successfully, while also avoiding pilots that just sit there in what we call pilot purgatory and never get off the ground. And really, frankly, this is a great way to test drive a lot of these AI initiatives, make sure they're working for your organization before you go so far as to implement them. And then finally, I always like to end this with, we're all learning. AI is going to be changing constantly in the next few years. And so we're all going to be lifelong learners under this AI education. And so go out there, try, experiment, use the free versions. By the way, there's a lot of free versions of AI tools, or they give you a certain number of tokens to use it, or there's a 2-week trial. Go ahead and use those trials and, free versions just to see how it fits within your needs. Make sure you're not using any, sensitive data when you're doing it, but, test it, experiment, try testing different prompts. You might even want to use AI to help you create the best kind of prompt for the type of, the type of information that you might be looking for, because you really want to be able to understand how that prompt is mitigating bias and hallucinations and anything else. And ideally, over time, you will become an expert in using these tools, and it's going to, very quickly start increasing your productivity. And also, because we're all going to be learning in this crazy new world of AI, share what you learn, because that's, if we all just learn in silos, it's not going to help any organization. So train your employees to, when they're learning new things, to go ahead and share those new tools or share those things that they've learned along the way so that the organization as a whole can benefit. And with that said, we'll go ahead and open it up to Q&A.
Thanks, Anne. We got some really great questions here for you. We'll start off with one that is basic. Well, what are some best practices for associations to determine what are allowable best choice tools for AI? For example, there are some generative AI options. We don't want our staff to subscribe to things like GPT, Anthropic, or Jasper. How do we assess these kinds of requests so staff can be trained and have access to a good set of tools? Also, things like image generation tools, which ones are turning out to be the best lately?
Yeah, so the image generation tools, I'll start with the back end of that question first. They are changing wildly and growing. There's some ones that have been around. Probably Midjourney's been around a long time. There's a few others that have been around for a fairly standard long period of time, and they're growing. They're improving literally by the week. I would highly recommend just kind of having that committee or group within your organization to maybe test drive some of these tools based on the use cases for how they're going to be used. And this also kind of feathers into having sort of an outside assistant come in and help evaluate these tools for you as well. Each one's going to work differently. Some of these large language models are better than others in certain areas. And so you really have to drill it down to the specific use case to say, you know what, in that scenario right now, it might not be a month from now, but right now the best tool to use is, say, this one. I'm just going to hypothetically say that Anthropic's Claude 3.5 is good for that right now. But in a week from now, or even months from now, it might be a different large language model that's better at doing that. And these are shifting and changing. By the way, there are platforms out there that are measuring these large language models on from the performance perspective. And there are also platforms you can go to where you can put a prompt up and you can, from a pull down menu, you can select the large language model you want to use to answer that prompt. And so therefore you can use several of them at one time to, really see which one's giving you the best answer in that situation.
Wonderful. Our next question is it okay to adapt an AI policy that we found online for our organization? Are there any dangers we should be aware of?
Yes. Unfortunately, AI policies are not one size fits all. And there actually are dangers in just, kind of cut and paste an AI policy. You want the policy to truly reflect your mission, your ethics, your goals, and also have it best understand your organization and how everything works within your organization. There's a lot of different fine tuning that goes on in the creation of an AI policy or an AI governance model. So these are the kinds of ways in which you can work in working with experts, they can help you best fine tune, how to make that model best work for your organization.
Great. There are so many AI tools coming out and our team members are very excited about them. How do we manage that excitement and trying to go them past that latest trendy tool?
Yeah, there's always going to be latest trendy tools because, like I said, there's new tools coming out every day. There are platforms that even highlight the latest tools when they come out. The key is to make sure, like I said earlier, and I'm going to probably repeat this several times, and that is make sure people are not uploading sensitive data and information into these tools. Because frankly, a lot of the companies that are behind these tools may not necessarily be good actors. Some of them are, and some of them are really solid tools, but some of them are just overnight startups that are just being started. Maybe some of them don't have the foundation in place to really be around even in a few weeks or a few years. And if you're kind of building a whole kind of use case around a tool, and that tool, unfortunately, was built by somebody that decided, oh, no, I'm going to switch gears and do something else. And all of a sudden, that tool no longer operates for you or isn't evolving with the times. That's a more important one. You want these tools to evolve as the AI evolves. Then that's not, ultimately, at the end of the day, the right tool for you. So you really have to research the companies behind these tools as well.
Wonderful. Next question is, how can we measure the success of our AI initiatives? What kind of KPIs should we track?
Yeah, so this is where I kind of say, hey, AI can help you here. AI can actually help, with the brainstorming of what the best KPIs might be for your organization. And also the kinds of, information and things that should be tracked along the way. But you do want to create that level of measurement that and create a baseline, before any of these use cases or AI initiatives get off the ground, track how things are being currently used. And you can sort of use some data points there. And then as the AI initiatives get involved, then you want to make sure that your organization is growing and actually, it's basically getting those, it's helping you to meet those goals, helping you to be more productive, helping you to do more, faster, better, whatever the measurement of the KPI is. And that's going to help you overall through the organization, measure the success of that program.
Wonderful. Our next one here is we like to embrace innovation whenever possible, but what do you suggest is the best way to maintain the balance between embracing the innovations that AI is bringing and ensuring stability for the organization?
Yeah, it's going to, frankly, every organization is going through this same kind of rocky transformative process with AI. There are going to be bumps in the road. It is not going to be a perfectly paved, smooth road into the future. So you just have to have the mindset of understanding that you're going to hit some dead ends, you're going to hit some potholes along the way, but you're actually going to need to keep moving forward because the AI is going to, your competitors are at least going to be using it. So it's really important to not get discouraged by, kind of the heartaches that are going to come along with this learning process and along with this growth process, frankly. So just keep persevering, keep, looking for, the best possible solutions. And also there's experts out there that can help guide you along the way as well. So take advantage of that.
Wonderful. Next one is, when we actually have an AI governance framework in place, how often do you think we should review and update it?
Yeah, I would say monthly. The reason I say monthly, and to some people that might sound like, wow, that's a lot, reviewing it every month. Frankly, if you have the option of reviewing it even more than every month, I would. And the reason I say that is because there's new things that are constantly coming up. For example, I talked about the fact that AI is now multimodal. So you can talk to the AI. You're going to very soon be able to use your camera on your phone to work with the AI. So that's going to require you to constantly be adjusting, those AI governance policies so that they best match up with the technology that's recently been introduced, and making sure that those are aligned with those new technologies as the technology itself evolves.
Wonderful. All right, I think our last question here is, you mentioned that bad data can be a problem when implementing AI. How do we know if our data isn't reliable, and what's a good first step to help improve data gathering processes to improve that data?
Yeah, so there's data assessments. In addition to AI assessments, there's data assessments. And I would highly recommend going through the process of hiring experts to come in and actually analyze your data. It's sometimes hard when you're inside an organization to look at your data, just much in the same way that, if you have just a very closed internal perspective on things, you want to get the mindset or the ideas from people on the outside to look at your data, because they're going to have a different perspective and they're going to bring different views to how that data could be used or maybe should not be used. And you may think your data is really healthy, but in fact, from an expert's perspective, it may not actually be healthy. And sometimes it just, it needs that kind of extra person or extra look, that extra data assessment to really analyze whether your data is healthy or not.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Anne, for that insightful presentation. And thank you all for attending today's webinar. We really hope you enjoyed and you found this session really valuable, and that it sparks some new ideas on how AI can be integrated into your organization.